Welcome to Session 2 of Embedded Writing. In Session 1, we discovered a quick and easy way to make certain that your students can pin down on-demand writing tasks when teachers provide the essential components for success within any given prompt. Remember, that doesn't stand for World Wrestling Federation here. Instead, WWF stands for Who, What, and Format. Not only will this tool work on on-demand prompts, it will also work for prompts that require more time and revisions. It will also support students as they work through close readings to provide textual evidence. Now, please keep in mind this WWF tool as we begin our exploration into Session 2, the power of paraphrase. Let's begin this exploration by looking into our own perceptions regarding paraphrasing and plagiarism. Why would students choose to plagiarize instead of paraphrase? Provide at least 5 words that characterize students' behaviors. I've included one of my own for you. Now, I recorded fear because I've encountered students who believed that they didn't possess the vocabulary or word savvy to recast another's idea. Although there is some truth to this, the real truth for all of us as writing coaches is that with appropriate activities, coaching, revision opportunities, and vocabulary stimulation, these students can develop better word savvy and have effective paraphrasing skills. Okay, now I've given you a term and an explanation. Now it's your turn. After you pause the video, complete the circle with 4 or more words that describe why students refuse to paraphrase. Then be prepared to share your rationale with colleagues or with your instructional coach if you need to do so at a later time. If you're interested, you will find a URL for why students plagiarize on your slide. This optional reading includes a perspective that may capture your attention. Now it's your turn to pause and ponder. Begin. Welcome back. If you are collaborating with a colleague, take a few moments to compare your responses. If you're working independently, you'll find opportunities to confirm and adjust your responses in the close reading tasks that are provided in this session. Your first close reading is an article written by Robert J. Garmston, a leader in the area of collaborative cultures. Please read through the text the first time to make a connection with the author. What is he saying to you? Why is this information important to you? Who else might need to read it? Next, create a document with the 4 quadrants shown on your slide. We will be expanding the WWF tool to include inferences now. Please feel free to print the text or paste it into a document that's suitable for highlighting and note-taking if you need to do so. Then read the document, identifying the WWF essential components. Record the information in the appropriate quadrant. You may want to reread or at least, at minimum, skim the text for each essential component. Remember to focus on what the author is saying in the WWF quadrants. You have a space for inferences to keep your thinking clear and fresh. After you complete this activity, think about your own expectations and your own behaviors for close reading assignments. Do they allow students the time and tools to glean the most essential and beneficial information from the text? Are you happy with your students' note-taking habits? What's working well for your students and why? And what is not going so well? How might you adjust the tasks for future success? Finally, to shore up your understanding of the text, summarize it by drafting the gist of its contents. You will use this to compare what you learned here with the upcoming texts. Now on to task number 2. You've noticed by now that we are beginning with the end in mind. The article you just finished used adult collaborative examples. If language is power, then paraphrasing must certainly be part of the grid that provides that power. The sooner our students comprehend the need to listen to each other, to understand each other, and to collaborate with each other, the more successful they have the potential to become. This text comes from Forbes magazine. As I read this article, I asked myself how many times I had neglected to drive home the idea that paraphrasing is not just an academic, even English language arts task. It's an essential life skill. Now, on to the task. Once again, please read through this text the first time to make a connection with the author. What is he saying to you? Why is this information important to you? Then, who else might need to read it? Next, create a new document now with the same 4 quadrants. Continue to include inferences. Feel free to print the text or paste it so that you can highlight or take notes as necessary. Then read the document, identifying the WWF essential components as you go. Record this information in the appropriate quadrants. Remember, you may want to reread or at least skim through to make sure that you're capturing what the author is actually saying. After you complete this activity, think about your own expectations for close reading tasks once again. As you monitor your own behaviors, did you take enough time to glean the most essential and beneficial information from the text? Do you feel compelled to make any changes to the note-taking primitive that I provided for you? Now let's jump over and think about your students for just a moment. Are you happy with your students' note-taking skills? Are there some components that you could add to make them better? Finally, to shore up your understanding of this text, summarize it by drafting a gist. Now, let's take this activity one step further. What comparisons did you find in the text that you've currently read? Also, what unique information exists only in each one separately? What will you use from these texts to bolster your own instruction? What might you have questions about or even disagree with? Use these questions to guide a dialogue with your colleagues or with your coaches. Task number 3 will require you to shift gears. You will be reading and viewing text. During your initial encounters with these 3 sources, please make note of any WWF changes you detect in the text. Who is the intended audience for this text? Why would it be important to them? And what is the purpose of the text? How does the format look different? How do you use similar text in your classroom? Now create a 3rd new document with the 4 quadrants using WWF and also inferences. Continue to include those inferences as you read. Now it's time to read the document, identifying the WWF essential components. Record this information in the appropriate quadrants. You may want to reread or at least at minimum skim as you look for each component. After you complete this activity, think about your own expectations. Now, is this text appropriate for paraphrasing? How would your students paraphrase this information? Do they use this language when discussing revisions or paraphrasing with peers and coaches? Are you happy with their use of this language during workshop settings? What is working well for your students and why? And what is not going so well? How might you adjust this for future success? And once again, shore up your understanding of these 3 texts by drafting the gist of their contents. Since we're seeing changes based upon our WW tool information, we should revisit the connections between all of these texts. What comparisons did you find in the text? What unique information exists only in each one separately? What will you use to bolster your own instruction? And what might you have questions about? Have you disagreed with anything yet? Now we're on to the last task using close reading. Our final task for this session will be to analyze a blog written by Eric H. Roth, a respected academic writing and public speaking professor from the University of Southern California. I'd like for you to think about how Roth's points support your situation as a teacher in your district. Now, create your fourth new document with the 4 quadrants, including the WWF items as well as inferences. Continue to include that information as you go. Feel free to print or paste this document so that you might highlight or take notes electronically. Then read the document identifying the WWF essential components. After you complete this activity, think about your own learning behaviors as you have progressed through these close reading assignments. What adjustments have you made in your own learning in order to take in what the authors are telling you? Do you have practices that are working very well for you? As you've gone through this session, have you abandoned any practices that haven't worked well? How will you teach this to your students? How might you adjust the tasks for future success? And what I mean by that are those tasks that you require of your students. How will you share this learning experience with your students? Once again, on this last piece, want to shore up your understanding of the text by summarizing it or drafting a gist of its contents. What connections did you find between this text and the previous ones? What unique information exists only in this one? Is there anything in this text that you will use to bolster your own instruction? Does Roth create anything that directs you to questions? Does he say anything you disagree with? Remember to use this in conversations with your colleagues or your coaches. Well, folks, we've reached the end of session 2. The only task remaining is your exit slip. So let's return once again to your admit slip. Remember those 5 words you used to describe why students don't or won't paraphrase? With each task in this session, you discovered and reflected upon solutions to improve not only your tasks and expectations, but also student confidence and performance. So here's your exit slip. Select 3 terms you recorded on your admit slip. So you had 5, you could choose from 3. Now, if you want to create solutions for all 5, I'm thrilled. Your next step is to create an infographic like the one you see on your screen. Write your words on the red arrows to the left. In the box to the right of the arrow, record possible solutions you have discovered during this session. Now keep this information handy for those times that when your students are struggling with paraphrasing tasks. Remember, it's worth your efforts. There is power in the paraphrase.